everyone, and welcome to our Microsoft Word series. Today's lesson is going to be about tables. Now, there are a number of different ways to create tables in Microsoft Word. These ones you don't necessarily want to use in the same way that you'd use Excel spreadsheets, which are more sort of an accounting style table. With Microsoft Word, however, you'll often find you need to sort data and make things sort of visually appealing, or sometimes you just need to make a calendar. So there's lots of reasons that you may need to be able to quickly draw a table, and Microsoft Word gives you lots of built-in tools for doing that. So this is one of those things where we think, well, if I need to insert something, if I need to add something to my document, I can always go to the Insert tab in the ribbon. So there are three sort of quick ways to insert a table. The first way is if you click on the Table button here. This is called a quick table. So the quick table, basically you're just selecting the number of cells that you want horizontally in your row, or basically how many columns you're looking for, and then how many rows you're looking for. So a maximum of 10 by 8. This is easy, it's pretty painless. It's automatically formatted to fit within the margins of your table, or the margins of your document. So you can see my margins are which we haven't discussed margins too much, but basically this gray area is 1 inch and 1 inch. So my table goes from all the way from margin to margin. It automatically formats the cells so that they're equally sized from left to right, and then their vertical sizing is automatically set based on what the size of your font is. So if you were to actually increase the font to, say, size 18 or so, this will automatically increase in size to handle the vertical height of the font that you're using. So I'm going to delete that real quick. Oops, forgot the basic rule: use backspace, not delete. Okay, you can also draw a table. So if we click the down arrow here, we can try drawing a table. This is also fairly quick in terms of the individual cells, but is probably the least functional version of drawing a table. Yeah, there's like you're basically, so what'll happen is you're essentially just drawing one cell at a time, and you can draw them anywhere, as you see here. When you draw them adjacent to each other, they automatically snap together, like so. But I can't really think of a situation wherein you'd actually want to draw a table like this. They look kind of sloppy. It's easy to accidentally draw them the wrong size or the wrong shape, or to accidentally merge cells you weren't planning to merge. So I don't think I would ever actually recommend using the draw table option. Now, if you want to get more specific, we can work within the Insert Table dialog, and the Insert Table dialog doesn't give us too many more options. The main things that allows us to go more than, see if we can go back here, we can do a maximum of 10 wide by 8 tall. If we're doing the Insert dialog, we can set whatever sort of number that we like. We can also choose whether the column width, so how wide each of these cells is from left to right. We can choose whether we want the table to basically automatically be formatted margin to margin, and then just make the cells the correct size to fit within that. Or we can actually choose what size our cells are. So this normally under the fixed table, or the quick table rather, would be formatted from left to right all the way to the edge of where our margin is, which is at 6.5 inches here. But instead our table's been shortened. So I'm going to go back to that dialog. Now, or actually, you know what, before we go and create another table, you can also create a table from text. So this is less like writing, or less like drawing a table, and more like doing a conversion process. So give this one a shot. We're going to create all of the content that's going to go in a table without actually creating a table. It's not likely that you would actually ever type stuff in this way. It's more likely that you would convert existing text to a table as opposed to writing it out with the intention of adding a table later. But you could, and it's actually fairly quick to do so. So basically, what I'm doing is writing each piece of data that's going to go into my table, and I'm just hitting tab in between. It's important that you hit tab. The table automatic formatting is not going to understand a space, and so even though I'll show you this here. Now you'll notice that these two are separated by very small space. These two are separated by a very large space, relatively speaking. So tabs are kind of meant to line up along the 1-inch margins. So because of that, what's happening is by typing, or by on the half-inch margins, I should say. So first name, I get here, I'm past the half-inch mark. So when I press tab, it takes me out to the 1-inch mark. Same thing here, I've gone just past half-inch, so it's going to tab over to 2 inches. But here, I'm actually in front of the half-inch, so when I hit tab, it only pushes my next word not very far. So this is one thing that maybe is a little bit strange when you're actually formatting these sort of things, is that it kind of looks a little bit silly, and like there is in fact a tab in between these two items, but this last character in the end falls just before the 1. So anyways, not to worry about it. Likely you're not going to be typing things in this way. Go ahead and type it in for yourself. Pause here and then come back. Okay, now that you've written it in for yourself, I'm going to go to Table Dialog, and we'll click Convert Text to Table. What this is going to do is it's going to analyze the data for how many columns and rows it thinks that it needs. So the rows is easy because there's literally just 3 lines of text. It can't really be wrong about that. And the number of columns, it's looking for tab marks to tell. So we've got 4 pieces of data that are separated by tab markers. It's important that your top line, whatever information is in your top line, has to have at least as many pieces as any line underneath, because it really only looks at that top piece of data. So once again, we can do fixed column width. I'm going to go with 1 inch instead, and you can see here where it's separating text at, it's looking for tabs. You can also do things like dashes or commas. Commas are fairly common when you're using certain types of Excel extracted documents called CSV, comma separated value tables, that sort of thing. We're not going to worry about that at this time. We'll look at it when we're doing Excel. But we're going to stick with tabs. I'm just going to OK. And just like that, we now have a table automatically formatted in. I'm going to quickly undo that, and just to show you what would happen if we had, say, a title, and our title is donations. If I were to do this, select all my text, tables, convert text to table. You see how it says 1 column? Because all it is doing is looking at the top row, and it only sees 1 item in my top row. So even though it's looking for tabs, oh there, okay, yeah, so by default it's using paragraph. So we have to switch over to tabs, and now it's going to try to recognize every single piece of data. We can go OK, and we'll get the same thing. So when you select a table, you end up with 2 special items popping up in the ribbon, Design and Layout. These allow you to edit the specific details of just the table itself, and we'll talk about those a little bit in just a minute here. When you are writing information into your table, You can always move between cells using the arrow keys if you like. Now, of course, the arrow key issue is if you're at the end of a word, you have to hit left all the way across. But this is fairly intuitive, and I don't think any of you will need any assistance with moving within your cells, but of course, clicking will also work. Just like with the select space on the left-hand side of the page where we're able to select paragraphs and whole lines of text, it also works for your table. But within the table, there's also some select space as well. So if I come to the extreme outer edge here, you see my cursor turns to sort of this little black arrow. And what that means is it's going to select the entire content of that cell. If I double click, it will also select the entire contents of this row. Likewise, if I go to the very top, a down arrow forms to indicate that it's going to select a whole vertical column. There is no single cell select when you're doing a column, because that doesn't need to exist in duplicate. It exists like this. So as long as you've got that, you can select your whole row and you can select your whole column. So let's just leave this as it is. If your table does not need to have this top line here, but it should have these things like this. I'm going to get rid of my top row and leave it at that. So let's create a new 4x4 empty table, and we'll let it be the whole size of our allowable space, because it's set to our margins. Now you can quickly insert new rows and columns in Microsoft Word 2013 and on simply by going over to the margin between two cells and go to its extreme outer edge. And you'll see a little plus button appears here. This is allowing us to insert one column. So we can add, let's just add a column like that. Oh. There we go. I don't know why that wasn't working for a second there. You can also right-click on a cell, and this brings up, there's the context menu here, but there's also our quick formatting box here, and we can go insert, and this gives us, it says insert above. It's going to insert an entire row above your current cell. Insert below inserts a row right below your current cell, and likewise to the left and to the right. So this is like just a little pop-out drawer. So let's add 2 columns. So we're going to add one to the left, and we'll add one to the right. So now we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 wide. Okay. Now you can delete entire rows or columns. This is a little bit counterintuitive. If you select all the text, say we select an entire row, so I'm just going to use this as an example. If I hit delete, I don't delete any part of the table, I only delete the text. However, sort of in a counterintuitive way, the actual way to delete cells is by hitting backspace when those cells are selected. So just by hitting backspace, and that's a little bit odd in my mind when I think of sort of intuitive things. When you think of, I want to delete cells, I'll hit delete. But when I want to get rid of text, I usually would hit backspace. So just a little bit backwards, but it is important to sort of remember that before you start accidentally deleting entire chunks of your table one way or the other. You can also select cells, and you can go right click and open up that context menu and hit delete, and it'll allow you to say delete individual cells, delete a column, delete a row. This functions in exactly the same way with just a little bit less context clues. It allows you to pick exactly what you want to do. So now we've got our 7x4 table here. You can also resize this. To continue working in tables here, we're going to go into Web View, Web Layout, because I don't want to be stuck working within the margins of the page. We'll just zoom in a little bit here so that we have more space to work with. So we've got our table here. We can grab, as soon as we click within the table, we get two toggles that show up. The left one at the top here is called the move toggle. By grabbing this, we can move our table around to a different location. We'll just leave it where it is for now. And at the bottom here, this is the resize toggle. So this allows us to easily resize our table. It equally resizes all cells within the table. If one cell happens, or one, say, row happens to be larger, it'll equally resize that as well. I should say proportionally resize it. Now you can actually resize individual cells. Oh, actually, sorry, I should say, if you'd like to change the table size, but you want it to stay the same proportional shape, because remember, if I'm pulling down like this, I can just increase its height or increase its width or both, some function of either. If I want it to stay the exact same, one line of text, I don't want these ratios to change. If I hold down the Shift button while toggling, you can see here that it stays proportionally identical to what it was before. Now you can resize individual cells. So if I go to grab this margin here, it only slides the margin within one cell here. Same thing if I'm doing vertically. Pardon me. But if I wanted to just resize one cell for whatever reason, all you have to do is highlight one, just select one cell, and then you can move its borders left and right on its own. So that gives that cell a little bit of control, or gives you a little bit of control over individual cells and sort of the shapes. Bearing in mind, if you ever had to do any calculations and whatever, this would probably screw things up. But if you're just going purely for aesthetics, you could fairly easily resize things that way. Now note, you can't actually highlight and then resize just a single cell vertically. That is not possible within Word. Why that is, I don't really have a good answer for it. It seems somewhat intuitive in my mind, but I actually just don't have a good actual reason to do so. Let's say we want to select this entire top row. The other thing that we can do is merge the cells. So merging cells basically just creates one giant cell out of everything that we have highlighted. So I can just right click, oopsie, deselect it here. I can right click and hit merge cells. If I do that, now you can see here I've got one large cell. Why would you want to do this? Well, sometimes it's easy to just create a title, for example. So let's say I put in a title that says donations. And just like typing anywhere else in a document, you can center it and change it, what have you. And maybe I'll add another row between. Give this a try, in fact. Is instead of wanting to put headings that are first name and last name, I actually want to go and merge these two cells and just say name and center those. And I'm sorry if I asked you to do this. You don't need to bother with this. This is because we're going to be deleting this table in a little bit, and obviously it's a different size than our top ones. But moving on, donation and date. Now I could put last name, first name, so it doesn't necessarily need to be separated. If I just want to have single titles, it ultimately is for the most part it's just aesthetic control. So I'm going to go ahead and undo all of that. There we go. So now for our actual assignment, what I'd like you to do is leave this existing little donation table, this little 4x3 table. I want you to leave that alone, let that stay there. I'm going to delete this table here. So I'm selecting all of it. That, by the way, that's the way to quickly select an entire table, is when you click within it, then go and click its drag tool or its move tool. You'll select the whole table. Just hit backspace. Let's get rid of it. So for your assignment, basically right underneath this table that we've already created here, we're going to create a new table. So go. I'd like you to create a table that's 8-6 wide by 6 cells tall, and you can do however you can do that however you like. So I'm going to use the quick select here. So I'm going to go, or quick draw, I should say. So 8 by 6, and that's already been inserted. And so we're going to select all of this except for the very top row. Now, we didn't talk about the design and layout tabs here, so let's take a look at layout. Right now, the height of my cells is automatically being set. It's currently set to 0.1, which basically means it'll actually bottom out at whatever the size of our text is. So once I increase to something larger than our text, it increases. So we're going to go height. I'd like this to be 1.5 inches. Okay, that's quite large. And the width is going to be 1 inch. And this row here, actually let's make this one all, these are going to be 1 inch as well for width. Okay. Now this one, let's merge these cells here. So just right click and merge. You can also do that within the layout tab. So let's quickly take a look at the layout tab. So this is all of your tools that have to do with the physical manipulation of the table. Not so much with the aesthetics, but with just the nitty-gritty control. The design, this is very much like page design, where you can change the aesthetic options of your table based on a whole bunch of themes and options that Microsoft has built in for you. And we'll worry about those in just a minute. So in this top row, we're going to type in March. We'll make a calendar here. I'd like you to highlight the row, or just even select within it. Go back to the Home tab and turn the style of that text into title. Now, just like any other piece of text in this, as I mentioned earlier, we can center it, so let's do that. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Perfect. What we'll do here is we're going to bring down the size of these left-hand ones, and I think that's probably good. We're just going to eyeball it, and I'll move my table back over. And last thing we'll do here is we're going to insert one additional row above this set of cells. So don't insert a row below March, because it'll just insert a row that is one single cell the entire length. So you can do that by right-clicking and insert, or you can do it from your layout tab. So I'm going to go insert above. I may actually have one too many rows. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. Nope, that's perfect. That's exactly what I want. So now we have 6 sets of squares here. This one we're going to resize vertically, and we're just going to pull it down like that. There we go. Okay. So we're going to title these according to the days of the week. Sunday. Alright, so that's good there. Now we've got this little box here, and this isn't quite working for me, having this extra space, so just aesthetically I kind of want to do something about it. So first thing I'm going to do is grab the top of my March calendar, just that top cell, highlight it, and now I want to change the margin just for that cell. and I drag it over so it lines up with this margin. Okay, and then I'm going to merge Sunday with this tiny little cell beside it, so I'll use the merge cells function up here. And with that single cell still highlighted, I'm going to move its margin over as well. So there we go. So we have this little overhang on the left. Now you may have noticed there is an alignment drawer here. And the alignment drawer allows you to put your text not just left, center, and right, but you can also vertically center or vertically align your text anywhere within the cell. So this is kind of nice. You don't get that option when you're just in the Home tab using these alignment tools. And of course that makes sense, because if you were to try to align something center and bottom, it would put it all the way at the bottom of your page, and then you'd have to type above it. It would be weird. But within the cells of a table, that context makes sense to have this sort of alignment. You can also change the text direction. So I want you to click within this leftmost cell at the top, and instead of text going from left to right, we're going to have it go from bottom to top. So I have to click that twice to make it happen. I'm going to center it in the cell both vertically and horizontally. And we'll say week 1. Oh, and my mistake, I actually should have selected the entire vertical column to make the text go up. Oh, clicking too many times. Center. There we go. There we go. So now you should have, I'm just going to zoom out a little bit so we can see our calendar a little bit better. So this is something approximating a calendar. The height is not quite working for me. I'm feeling this is a little bit too big, a little too square. So I'm going to change the height of each of these cells. So highlight everything from week 1 to week 5, but not these top rows. I'm going to bring our height down to 1 inch. I just think I like the aesthetic of squares better. Okay, so our text in this row should also be centered to keep up with this sort of effect of being a title row. So we'll center it like that. And let's grab our days of the month. So our March started on Wednesday, and that was the 1st. So go ahead and number your calendar, and we'll come back in a second. Okay, so now that you're done numbering off your calendar, we're going to do some stuff to make it a little more visually appealing, a little more visually interesting. So let's head on over to the Design tab. And now we've got, as I mentioned before, a whole bunch of different themes available to us. So the first thing we'll look at before we hit the theme, actually let's put in a basic theme here, something nice and simple. Just do plain table 4. There are some options to select up here. It says first column, and it's asking, do we want first column to be basically like a title column. So when we do first column, and we select it like this, we'll end up with bolded text along everything in our first column. Because I've chosen to merge my Sunday cell with the leftmost cell and then bring it over, the Sunday is going to be grabbed within that. But because it's a calendar and Sunday's a day of rest, I actually don't mind that. I think aesthetically that's fine. And the same thing when I say first header row. If I deselect header row, basically this gray and white alternating theme will shift in one direction, but it essentially pays this top row, whatever this top row is, it turns it into something special within the table, or gives it a sort of special place within the table. Now, if we didn't have a title box, and I'm just going to delete it for a second here, you can see that it would treat Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, etc. As a special row. I'm not going to do that today. But what we probably should do is let's bold that whole line of text. So I just hit Control B. Now I had to do it twice because one of these was already bolded. So I had to hit Control B twice in order to get all of the text to change over. So let's go through. I wonder if we can find a green theme. Maybe not. That's a little too light green. Let's go with a darker green for St. Patrick's Day, because St. Patty's Day is coming up. That's maybe too much green. Oh god, yeah, no, that's all green. Now, as you can see here, there are some tables that have their own formatting that is a little bit different. This one's got extra banding at the bottom and the top. This one looks like a document or a table format I'd probably use if I was doing a budget or something like that, because this would be like all my items would be in the left column, and then we'd have various pricing data, and then we'd have like totals along the bottom and stuff like that. But it doesn't really matter. We're just looking for one that suits our desire to have a St. Patrick's Day themed calendar. So this one's going to work for me. So let's alt use careful shading accent 6. Okay, so go ahead and do that. And Sunday gets a special highlight. Now these 3 boxes and this 4th one down here, they don't have anything in them because they're from the previous month. So we could do a couple of things here to make them, to sort of aesthetically or visually strike them out. So what we'll do here, how many days do we have in February 28th this year, right? It's not a leap year. That's right. So we'll still number these off 26, 27, 28. But to make it clear that these are not part of our month, we'll right click for context. We'll change our color to something a little bit grayed out. Do the same thing for this box. We're just changing the text color. Now, because I just changed a font color, the automatic choice for our font first up is the same color, so I can just select and click. Okay, so those days are kind of automatically deselected. If we wanted to go even further with that, I could select this 3 cells, and I'm just going to hold down Control and use the select arrow on this one to select it as well. And we can change its shading to a light gray. There we go. So now those boxes are grayed out, so they're quite visually separated from the rest of the table. Now, let's say we decided that having white lines between all the cells is not quite as strong looking as we want for our table. So we can select the entire table, and what we'll do is we'll hit the movement control, and we can do border styles, and we can add a border around our cells. Let's try this. So we can choose our border to be black, and then there's so what comes up first is the border painter. So if you look at my control, it looks like a little fountain pen. And so the way that this works is when I click on individual cell borders, it adds a special X, like whatever I've selected for the size of my border to be to just that cell. Um, so we're not going to do that for the moment. You might want to use this to outline, to actually outline specific days. So actually, let's go with, well, before we do that, we'll just use the regular borders function. We'll do all borders, and because this doesn't, I don't really like this because it actually would add a border around the March. So I'm going to deselect everything and just use the select area. Oops. To select everything except for the March portion. We'll do borders. I don't want a really big thick border, just something small. We'll do a half point. We'll do all borders. There we go. So let's say March 17th we want to do a special border for that. So I'm going to go up to 1.5 points. We'll use the border painting tool. And I'm going to select these edges because this is St. Patrick's Day, so that's something I want to remember. We're also coming up on spring break, so maybe I'll outline the days of the week of spring break as something else. Oh. So there we go, just takes a minute. So there we go, spring break's been outlined as well. And that's it. So now you've got yourself a nice calendar. This is obviously not the only reason you would use tables. There are a million reasons to use tables within Microsoft Word. But this is sort of a quick and painless one that you may want to do really at any time. Now we're going to hop back into our page view. Oh, I'm in reading view. I don't want that. There we go, page view. And as you can see, my table fits reasonably well within my borders, so I'm not terribly concerned with resizing it. If I wanted this table to be larger, and just for argument's sake, I'm going to delete my little budget table at the top here. I could always go to Layout, Orientation, and change my page to Landscape. So now when I zoom out, you can see that this table is actually sort of fitting within the margins a little bit better. And drag it up and resize it to sort of fit within the page. So you could do that as well. This would be a nice way to do a page printout. That layout for your page is better suited to something like a calendar, which is usually wider than it is tall. I'm not going to do that though. I just wanted to do it for argument's sake. So here's what your completed document should certainly look like. Save it. Submit it as Lesson 7 assignment for Microsoft Word as a new page within your OneNote. As always, if you have questions, feel free to drop me a line. Have a great day.